There have been multiple changes to the fish room, including major aquascaping revamps to existing setups, and 2 new nano aquariums. This update will be presented in multiple videos, so let's begin with part 1. I've always had an aquarium within my fish room that was utilized as a home for wayward fish, a place where a single outcast could be placed, or a mixed group of oddballs could be kept. This aquarium was started 10 years ago to be the home for my group of clown loaches, and they have been the priority of this tank ever since. Along the way, additions have been included, provided they would not conflict with the loaches. The addition of a few more pounds of smooth pebbles across the front substrate and the shuffling of the existing rocks, petrified wood, provided a different texture to the display. An artificial plant, suction cupped on the rear glass at the waterline, was added to provide cover for the newly added sunset platies and their future fry. This aquarium also includes a scattering of mixed tetras and a few interesting fish, including a striped red-tailed loach and 2 pairs of Chinese red bitterlings. Outside of the clowns, there is really nothing remarkable about this setup, and it hasn't evolved much over the years. If anything, this aquarium is the only one in my care that is not species only or focused on a few isolated species. For that reason it is unique, to me anyway. Sitting next to the planted aquarium is the 75-gallon Neolamprologus similis and Juliochromis ornatus setup. The Danio-infused planet tank is frenetic and at times could use a Valium to calm it down. This aquarium is in stark contrast to its neighbor. It is a laid-back, chilled to the max, mellow display, appearing to be in a state of slow motion. For years, this aquarium was arranged in a terraced fashion. In an attempt to utilize the entire 4-foot length for both the Julies and the Shellies, a shelf was constructed to hold a rock structure above the sand bed for the Julies to occupy, while allowing the entire stretch of sand to be available to the Shellies. Even though this layout did work as planned, it all but stunted both groups from breeding. I believe that the Shellies were too intimidated by the presence of the Julies above them to feel comfortable enough to spawn, since they were always on the lookout for encroaching fish, and without any gaps in the rock work on the ledge, the Julies did not breed with any regularity. In an attempt to rectify this, the terrace was removed and the aquarium was re-aquascaped to its original traditional configuration, split in half, one side for the Julies and one for the Shellies. Breaking the line of sight between the two groups is a large artificial plant separating the two zones. Within months after this modification, there are currently fry of both species present in the aquarium. Interestingly, a pair of Julies spawned among the shells in the right rear corner of the sand bed. I think this occurred because the rock pile on the left is inhabited by a larger pair of Julies, and the smaller pair made the best of the situation and migrated to the shell bed. The Shellies do not seem to mind, and simply appear to have relinquished that area to the Julies, while the similis have spawned in other areas of the sand bed. So far, there's been no conflict between them. There has been a dramatic change to the aquascape of this aquarium over the last year. Since its creation, this aquarium always housed a group of African cichlids. For this reason, there was a large pile of stones on the left side of the hardscape to provide them the habitat they desired. With the removal of all but one dwarf cichlid, the rock pile was disassembled, more substrate was added, and plant clippings from the right side, along with a few new pieces of decor, were added to stretch the existing scape to its full 4-foot length. A dozen giant danios were transferred from outside to this aquarium to double the existing group to a rather robust 24. Along with the addition of the giant danios, a small clutch of sunset platies were transferred, and 6 juvenile yo-yo loaches were added to provide substrate maintenance. Rounding out the roster are a dozen or so of assorted pearl, regular, and gold zebra danios, and a single Juliochromos transcriptus, who is the aquarium's den mother, keeping all the fish in line by harassing them all equally. Although algae growth is minimal, a few nerite snails, a large Siamese algae eater, and 2 clown plecos are on hand to make quick work of eradicating it. The plecos have matured, and 2 small pieces of driftwood have been added to satisfy their need to gnaw, providing them something other than the resin ornaments to chew on. The addition of more plants, coupled with the increase in fish population, has made this aquarium take off in the last year. It is not a finely crafted, neatly trimmed work of perfection, but more of a rough, semi-natural looking display that invokes your attention when viewing because there is just so much going on inside its glass walls.
I crashed in the jungle while trying to keep a date with my little girl who was back in the States. I was stranded in the jungle, afraid and alone, trying to figure a way to get a message back home. But how was I to know that the wreckage of my plane had been picked up and spotted and my girl in Lover's Lane? And meanwhile, back in the States,
baby, baby, let's make romance. You know your old time lover hasn't got a chance. He's stranded in the jungle, glad as he can be. So come on, pretty baby, just you and me.
and meanwhile, back in the jungle, the boys in the jungle had me on the run when something heavy hit me like an atomic bomb. When I woke up and my head started to clear, I had a strange feeling I was with cooking gear. I smelled something cooking and I looked to see. That's when I found out they was cooking me.
Great, Googa Booga, let me out of here.
And meanwhile, back in the States,
Baby, baby, let's make romance. You know your old time lover hasn't got a chance. He's stranded in the jungle, glad as he can be. So come on, pretty baby, just you and me.
and meanwhile, back in the jungle, I jumped out the pot and I finally got away, frantic and worried about what my baby would say. So I jumped in the ocean and started to swim, but my chance of survival was getting mighty slim. So I thumbed down a whale who was in my way, and I reached the States in about half a day. And when I got to Lover's Lane, I was almost dead, but my soul was gone, and here's what I said.
Baby, baby, the man is no good. Oh, baby, baby, you should have understood. You can trust me as long as you please. So come back, pretty baby, where you used to be. 'Cause I love you. 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 'Cause I love you.
Do-de-do-de-bo.
The conception and progression of this aquarium has been video documented throughout the years on this channel. If you have watched any of the prior videos, you are aware that this colony of duboisi has been around for quite a while. Over the last few years, I have struggled with the lack of breeding and have attempted to promote expansion of this group by infusing it with juvenile members to induce population growth. These attempts have all been futile, and stagnancy prevails. I've now accepted the fact that this aquarium is a retirement home for these fish, and any hopes of breeding are a fantasy. This is not such a big deal since I have a group of duboisi outside that are breeding regularly and expanding nicely. There have been minor changes to this aquarium in the past year, including the removal of one of the large artificial plants, which was transferred to the clown loach tank, and the inclusion of 6 Syndonatus lucipini, which were transferred from the clown loach tank. I'm contemplating a dramatic change to this aquarium, but more about that later. The aquascape for this aquarium was composed of all the stones that were removed from the left side of the planted aquarium. Originating in February of 2017, this group of Tropheus has matured well in 2 years. In past videos, I have lamented about the non-breeding within this colony and was growing frustrated with the lack of any consistent holding females or the appearance of any fry. Through past experience with keeping duboisi and the misfortune of having a colony break out heavily male with few females in the bunch, I was concerned that this may have happened again with this group of bemba flames. As the colony approached a year old, there was no expansion. I was, to put it mildly, disappointed. Now, as the group approaches 2 years of age, the breeding is ramping up, and multiple age fry are appearing. Patience is so critical, and you must accept that fish will breed when they are ready, and not necessarily when you are. Regarding the change to the 180-gallon duboisi aquarium I mentioned before, I'm seriously considering moving the bemba flames to the duboisi tank and combining the 2 colonies. There are potential pitfalls with this move, and I've been weighing them carefully. On the positive side, the 180-gallon is understocked and can accept the addition of the entire bemba flame colony without any issue. Moving them will provide the flames more legroom, and being housed with a larger numbered group of duboisi will help diffuse some of the aggression between the bemba males. Since duboisi and bemba flames are different Tropheus species, the risk of crossbreeding is minimal. On the negative side, it is common when housing multiple species of Tropheus together that one group ultimately dominates the others, but this is mostly concerning breeding and not cohabitation. The dominant species group will breed more readily than the submissive group. This is not a deal breaker, since the duboisi have been impotent for years, and if the flames breed more frequently, more power to them. There is a slight concern about aggression between the groups, but this is not a large risk and seldom happens. In most cases, the 2 groups just ignore each other. What's holding me back is the fear that the 2 groups do tussle with each other, and the concern of having to ultimately remove one of them. When a group's dynamic is disturbed, there is no guarantee that when returned to their original configuration, they will once again peacefully coexist. I'm nearly convinced to attempt combining the 2, and if it happens, I will update accordingly.